We often talk about healing like it is a race to the finish line, a calculated sprint toward a horizon where everything finally clicks into place. We spend so much energy imagining a version of ourselves that is fixed, someone who is finally calm, finally unshakable, and finally finished with the heavy lifting of simply existing. We treat our internal progress like a project to be managed, checking off boxes, hoping that if we just work hard enough at being better, the exhaustion will naturally dissipate. But sometimes you wake up and your heart simply feels tired. It is not a dramatic, movie-style collapse. It is a slow, quiet ache, a persistent sense that you have been carrying something for a very long time, and you are not quite sure how to put it down. That exhaustion is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you have been moving through a great deal of transition, even when nobody else noticed the effort. We live in a world that asks us to perform, to remain composed, and to keep our shoulders back, even when the weight of our own history feels like lead. You might be carrying the echoes of old expectations, the fatigue of trying to be everything to everyone, or the quiet, draining work of trying to understand why you feel so disconnected from your own joy. You don't have to explain this fatigue to anyone else to make it real. You don't need a justification or a logical reason to justify why your heart feels heavy today. It is important that you simply acknowledge it to yourself without judgment. When we hold on to things, regrets, memories, or the remnants of past versions of ourselves, we don't realize how much energy it takes just to maintain that grip. You have been navigating a world that constantly demands your attention, your reaction, and your presence, all while you were trying to piece together your own stability beneath the surface. It is no wonder that the heart grows weary. It is like carrying a backpack filled with stones. Eventually, you stop noticing the weight because you have become so accustomed to the strain. But that doesn't mean your muscles aren't screaming for relief. Please understand that this tiredness is not a lack of resilience. It is actually the opposite. It is the residue of your endurance. You are tired because you have been fighting to stay upright, to stay kind, and to keep moving forward despite the internal friction. There is a deep, honest validity to this exhaustion. It is the body and the heart saying, I have been working so hard for so long, and I need a moment to be human, not just to be productive. Give yourself the grace to stop pretending. You do not have to put on a brave face for your own reflection. When the ache arrives, let it be there. Don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to label it as a problem to be solved. And don't rush to apologize for it. Acknowledging the weight is the first step toward eventually letting it go. By sitting with your own tired heart, you are signaling to yourself that you are finally listening, that you are no longer forcing yourself to ignore your own needs. It is okay to be exactly where you are in this exact moment of weariness, because recognizing the truth of your exhaustion is a profound act of compassion. You are not falling behind. You are simply pausing, And in that pause, there is the beginning of a genuine, slow, and necessary recovery. You have earned this rest, and you deserve the quiet permission to simply be, without the pressure to be anything else. Think about the last few months. Think about the quiet, invisible labor that has gone into just getting through the day. How many times have you had to steady yourself when something unexpected happened? Perhaps just beneath the surface of a conversation, or in the solitude of a quiet room. You have been navigating a complex internal landscape that no one else can see. We tend to value the visible milestones, the achievements, the outward signs of growth. But we almost entirely overlook the immense, tiring work of simply maintaining yourself. How many times have you held space for your own frustration, your own doubt, or your own disappointment without letting it spill over? How often have you swallowed a sharp word or checked a reactive impulse, choosing instead to lean into a more patient, though infinitely more exhausting way of responding? You are doing the work of constant, moment-by-moment adjustment. When we are navigating deep personal change, we are essentially building a new foundation for our lives while we are still living inside the old, crumbling structure. It requires an incredible amount of psychological energy to deconstruct old patterns while you are still expected to function at work, in your relationships, and in your daily responsibilities. Every time you consciously choose to treat yourself with a little more grace, or every time you pause to breathe through an old reflex of self-criticism, you are engaging in a heroic act of reconstruction. It is an unseen labor, often solitary and profoundly taxing. We often feel like we aren't doing enough because the results of this internal work aren't always tangible. You don't get a medal for refusing to spiral into self-loathing. You don't receive applause for taking a deep breath instead of snapping at a colleague. And yet, these are the moments that matter most. You are learning to override the automatic, damaging scripts that have run in your mind for years. That takes a level of focus that is equivalent to learning a new language. You are constantly monitoring your own internal climate, managing your energy, and trying to protect your own sense of self in the midst of everything else. It is no wonder the heart feels worn thin. You are doing more than you think, and you have been doing it for much longer than you've given yourself credit for. There is a tendency to dismiss this work as just being normal, but there is nothing normal about the intensity of the struggle to heal. You have been walking a tightrope, balancing the person you were with the person you are becoming, and doing it without a safety net. Give yourself permission to acknowledge the sheer volume of effort involved in this process. You are not behind. You are in the middle of a major renovation. It is messy, it is loud, and it is exhausting. When you feel that wave of fatigue hit, look back at the quiet battles you have fought and won in total isolation. You have navigated grief, frustration, and the disorientation of change, and you have come out the other side each time. You have been showing up for yourself even when you didn't feel like it. You have been doing the hard, grinding, behind-the-scenes work of building a life that feels more like your own. Today, don't worry about being productive. Don't worry about meeting a standard. Just allow yourself to sit in the recognition that you have put in a Herculean effort. That effort is real, it is valid, and it is a testament to your quiet strength. Take a moment to honor the person who has been doing all this lifting, because that person, the one who keeps trying, keeps showing up, and keeps holding on, deserves your profound respect. There is often a significant, aching distance between where we are and where we want to be. We feel this gap every day, a silent space that stretches out between the person we were, the person we are currently struggling to inhabit, and the person we hope to eventually become. We tend to measure our progress by how much of that distance we have successfully closed. We look at our calendar, our bank account, our relationships, or our internal peace, and we compare them to an idealized vision of what healing should look like by now. We think, if I were truly doing this right, I wouldn't still feel this way, or I should have moved past this trigger by now. That comparison is a trap. The heart, however, does not work in miles, metrics, or timelines. It works in the quiet, stuttering rhythm of moments of recognition. When we fixate on the gap, we are essentially looking at everything we haven't achieved yet, which only serves to magnify our sense of lack. We are focusing on the horizon while ignoring the actual ground beneath our feet. Carl Jung once observed, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the core of our work. We are often tired because we are finally bringing those hidden, painful, or long-suppressed parts of our history out of the shadows and into the light. We are not just closing a gap, we are terraforming our own inner world. That process is exhausting, not because it is wrong or because you are failing, but because it is honest work. It is the work of excavating truth from layers of habit and defense. When you feel that gap, when you feel like you aren't far enough along, try to reframe it. That feeling of distance isn't a measure of your inadequacy. It is a measure of your awareness. The fact that you can even see the gap means you are conscious of what needs to change. You are no longer living in a state of automatic, unconscious reaction. You have reached the point where you can observe your own patterns, and that in itself is an enormous achievement. It is easy to believe that the gap is a vacuum, a nothingness where you are waiting to become real. But the gap is actually where the transformation happens. It is the crucible. It is the middle space where you are learning to tolerate uncertainty, where you are learning to be kind to yourself when you stumble, and where you are learning to validate your own experiences before they are validated by anyone else. You are learning how to exist in the in-between. If you are currently feeling the strain of this distance, stop trying to sprint across it. You cannot force growth any more than you can force a plant to bloom faster by pulling on its leaves. You are cultivating your own internal ecosystem, and that requires patience. Some days, the gap will feel like an abyss, and other days, it will feel like a manageable step. Both are part of the process. You are doing the hard, quiet work of integration. You are taking all the scattered pieces of yourself, the parts that were hurt, the parts that were silenced, and the parts that were hidden away, and you are slowly, carefully teaching them how to work together again. So, when you feel that sting of not being there yet, pause and look at how far you have come from the beginning. You are not the same person you were when you started this. You have new language for your emotions, new boundaries for your interactions, and a new depth of understanding about what you need to survive and thrive. You are moving forward, even when it feels like you are standing still. The gap is not a sign that you are lost. It is a map of the territory you have yet to map out with your own kindness. Trust the process of the middle. You are exactly where you need to be to learn what you are learning right now. Everything else will arrive in its own time. If you are currently feeling the sharp edge of the strain, the most productive thing you can do might be the thing that feels the most counterintuitive or even frightening: simply stopping. We have been conditioned to believe that movement is synonymous with growth, and that stillness is a dangerous stagnation. We live in a world that constantly hums with the demand for more output, more resilience, more adaptation, and more visible signs of progress. We are taught that if we are not moving, we are drifting backward. But there is a fundamental difference between stalling and resting, and learning to distinguish between the two is a vital part of your healing. Resting is not an act of giving up. It is not an admission of defeat. It is a deliberate, intentional act of gathering your resources. Think of it as a necessary recharge for an engine that has been running on empty for far too long. When your heart is tired, it is essentially sending you a signal that its capacity for processing has been reached. It is telling you that the internal systems, the ones that handle your emotions, your memories, and your daily reactions, need a reprieve from the constant, high-pressure dialogue that demands you be more, faster, and better. When you don't allow yourself to pause, you end up operating from a place of depletion. You are forcing your mind and your heart to make decisions and navigate challenges while your reserves are gone. This is where the inner harshness creeps in, where your patience for yourself evaporates, and where the simplest task feels like an insurmountable mountain. By forcing yourself to keep going when you are deeply, soul-wearily tired, you are not actually making progress. You are just deepening the exhaustion. Giving yourself permission to pause is a radical act of self-trust. It is the moment you decide that your own well-being is more important than the external expectations you've been trying to meet. It is the acknowledgement that you are a human being, not a machine, and that your value is not tied to how much you can endure without breaking. When you give yourself that permission, You are taking the power back from the internal voice that tells you that you must keep working until you reach a point of complete burnout. What does a pause look like for you? It doesn't have to be a grand gesture or a vacation. It can be small, quiet, and mundane. It can be putting down the phone, stepping away from the screen, or closing the door on the tasks that feel like they are circling you. It can be sitting in a chair, watching the light change across the room, or simply breathing in and out without trying to fix anything, analyze anything, or plan for anything. It is the act of letting the to-do list drop to the floor and deciding that for the next 10 minutes or the next few hours, you are not responsible for solving the world's problems or even your own. When you pause, you create a vacuum, and for a moment, that might feel scary. You might feel the urge to fill it with something, a distraction, a worry, a criticism. But if you can sit through that initial discomfort, you will find something else underneath. Space. Space for your nervous system to regulate. Space for your thoughts to settle. And space for your heart to simply catch up to the rest of you. You are allowed to stop trying to be the hero of your own story for a little while. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to feel like you haven't mastered your life yet. By allowing yourself to pause, you are teaching your heart that it is safe to rest. You are showing it that you are not a taskmaster, but a protector. And when you finally do return to your work, when you do eventually stand up to move forward again, you will do so with a different kind of strength. Not the brittle strength of forced endurance, but the steady, grounded strength of someone who knows how to honor their own limits. You are worth that rest, and you have the absolute right to claim it. Many of us live with a constant, humming background noise, an internal voice that is remarkably harsh, especially when we are down. This is the voice of the critic, a persistent shadow that watches our every move, ready to weigh in with a sharp, judgmental remark the moment we show a crack in our armor. When you are hurting, this voice is often the loudest. It doesn't offer comfort. It offers critique. It tells you that your exhaustion is a sign of weakness, that your need for rest is a lack of discipline, or that your struggle is a sign that you are somehow doing life incorrectly. It thrives on the idea that you are not enough, and it uses your current fatigue as evidence to support its claims. But pause for a moment and consider the source of that voice. It is often an echo of old patterns, internalized expectations, or outdated survival mechanisms that you once needed to navigate your world. It believes it is protecting you by keeping you alert, by pushing you to be better, by keeping you from failing in the eyes of others. But it is an outdated protection system, one that hasn't realized that the person you are today is different from the person you were when that voice was formed. It is trying to use a hammer to mend a delicate, aching heart. Imagine, for just a second, that you are speaking to someone you deeply care about, a dear friend, or a younger version of yourself who is going through exactly what you are right now. They come to you, heavy-hearted, tired, and feeling like they have no more left to give. Would you tell them they are lazy? Would you tell them that they are failing because they need a break? Would you highlight all the ways they could have done things better? Of course not. You would offer them warmth. You would offer them space. You would tell them that it is okay to be exactly where they are, that they are doing a difficult job, and that they are worthy of kindness simply because they exist. Why then is it so difficult to turn that same grace toward yourself? We have become so accustomed to being our own toughest judges that we've forgotten we are also meant to be our own advocates. The critic has become the default setting, the first voice we hear when something feels difficult or painful. Changing this is not about silencing the voice instantly or fighting it with more anger, which only creates a new layer of conflict. It is about recognizing it for what it is, a part of you that is trying to manage your life through fear, but doing a poor job of it. Start by practicing a shift in how you relate to that voice. Instead of identifying with it, try to observe it. When you hear that critical thought, "You're being so unproductive today," or "Why are you still struggling with this?" Try to step back and label it. Say to yourself, "I am hearing a thought that is being critical," or "That is my critic trying to keep me moving." This simple shift creates a tiny bit of space between you and the thought. You don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to follow its instructions. You can simply notice that it is there, thank it for its attempt to help, and then consciously choose a different, more compassionate direction. This is not a one-time fix. It is a slow, repetitive practice of reparenting your own mind. It is about consistently replacing that sharp, biting tone with one that is patient and understanding. When you catch yourself being cruel, offer a gentle correction. Say, "It makes sense that I feel this way because I have been carrying much." Validate your own experience, even when the critic is screaming for something else. You are the only person who has been there for every single one of your struggles, from the very beginning to this current moment. You are the only one who knows the true depth of what you have navigated. That history deserves a measure of kindness that you have, for too long, denied yourself. You are the source of the validation you are looking for, and it starts with choosing to be on your own side, even, and especially, when the internal noise is the loudest. Healing is often less about finding a way out and more about learning how to be truly present within yourself. It is about the quiet, sometimes uncomfortable work of sitting with the parts of ourselves we usually try to run away from. We spend so much of our lives trying to distract ourselves from our own discomfort, reaching for our phones, staying busy, or looking for external validation, all to avoid the heavy weather happening inside our own chests. But when your heart is tired, the most radical thing you can do is to stop running. It is to turn around, sit down, and finally look at what is there. This process is what I call mapping the internal landscape. It is about checking in and asking a very simple yet profound question. What does this feel like right now? Note that the question isn't, why do I feel this way? Or, how do I make this go away? Those questions are intellectual. They are attempts to film or solve. But your heart doesn't need to be solved. It needs to be felt. When you shift your focus to the physical and emotional sensations of the moment, you stop fighting a war with yourself and start becoming an explorer of your own experience. Sometimes, when you look inside, the feeling is a physical tightness, like a knot in your stomach that won't undo itself. Sometimes, it is a heavy, leaden weight in your limbs that makes every movement feel like you are walking through water. Other times, it is simply a vast, quiet blankness, a sense of being hollowed out after too much stress. By naming these sensations without judging them, you begin to change your relationship with your pain. You move from being a victim of your emotions to being an observer of them. You start to see that the feeling is a visitor passing through your home, not the permanent resident you feared it was. This kind of mapping requires a tremendous amount of patience. When we encounter a difficult emotion, like grief or deep-seated frustration, our instinct is to push it away because it feels like it might swallow us whole. But when you map it, you realize that an emotion has boundaries. It has a beginning, a middle, and eventually an end. You learn that you can sit with a heavy heart and not be crushed by it. You learn that you can feel a wave of sadness and still remain standing. Think of it as learning the geography of your own soul. You are discovering where the sensitive areas are, where the old wounds still sting when touched, and where the quiet, resilient parts of you are hiding. You are learning that you don't have to be afraid of what you find inside. Even the darkest, most tired parts of your heart are just parts of you that have been trying to protect you in the only way they knew how. When you approach them with curiosity instead of fear, they tend to soften. By mapping this landscape, you are also learning to recognize your own warning signs. You start to notice when the tiredness is beginning to set in before it becomes a total collapse. You learn to recognize the subtle shift in your internal weather that means you need more rest, more solitude, or more kindness. This self-awareness is a form of power. It allows you to navigate your life with more intention and less reactivity. You are no longer at the mercy of every internal storm. You are the one holding the map, navigating the terrain with a steady hand and a compassionate heart. You are teaching yourself that no matter how difficult the landscape becomes, you are capable of being the person who walks through it, one gentle step at a time. Change is rarely the clean, surgical break we hope it will be. We often imagine it as a door we walk through, leaving the old version of ourselves behind in a single, decisive moment. But in reality, change is much more like architecture. It is a slow, structural process of dismantling and rebuilding that happens while you are still living inside the house. It involves letting go of old ways of interacting with the world that used to keep us safe, but no longer serve us. These habits, these ways of being, were once your walls and your roof. They protected you when the world felt too loud or too harsh. And letting them go, even when you know they are crumbling, feels like exposing yourself to the elements. It is like moving out of a home you've lived in for decades. You know exactly where every creak in the floorboards is. You know the specific way the light hits the walls at 3 in the afternoon. Even if the roof is leaking and the foundation is cracked, there is a terrifying comfort in the familiar. Moving into a new way of being means leaving that familiarity behind and standing in the open air for a while, waiting for the new walls to rise. This is why you are so tired. You are doing the heavy labor of deconstruction. At the same time, you are trying to design a new future. Carl Jung noted that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he didn't say that becoming is easy. This becoming is not a smooth, linear path. It is messy, and it involves a lot of trial and error as you figure out who you are when you aren't trying to please everyone else or meet a standard that was never yours to begin with. You are essentially redesigning your own boundaries, your own values, and your own sense of what it means to be okay. You are learning how to build a life that is supported by your own truth rather than the expectations of others. The architecture of change requires you to be both the builder and the building. You are the one feeling the weight of every beam being moved. There will be days when the construction site of your soul feels like a disaster area, when there is dust everywhere, and you can't see the progress, and you just want to go back to the old, broken house, because at least you knew how to survive there. In those moments, it is vital to remember that the mess is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of progress. You cannot build something new without first making a space for it. As you navigate this transition, try to be patient with the unfinished parts of yourself. You might have a beautiful new window in one room, but a gaping hole in another. You might have found peace in your morning routine, but still find yourself falling into old defensive patterns in your relationships. That is the nature of the work. You don't have to be a finished structure to be worthy of respect. The courage it takes to look at your life and say, "This layout no longer fits the person I am becoming," is immense. Every time you choose a new response over an old habit, you are laying a brick. Every time you speak your truth instead of swallowing it, you are reinforcing the floorboards. Every time you allow yourself to rest when you are tired, you are weatherproofing your spirit. This is the quiet, daily architecture of a life being reclaimed. It takes time for the mortar to dry and for the new structure to feel like home. Give yourself the grace to live in the middle of the renovation. You are building something more authentic, more durable, and more reflective of your true self. And that is worth every ounce of the effort you are putting in. When the larger picture of your life feels like it is in flux, when the waves of transition are high and you are feeling the exhaustion of deep change, it is very common to feel like you are losing your footing. Everything that once felt certain might seem a little shaky, and your capacity to hold the big, complicated questions of your life can suddenly feel very limited. When this happens, the most compassionate thing you can do is to stop trying to hold up the entire sky and instead shrink your focus. Find your stability in the small, tactile, and predictable things. Stability does not have to be a grand, sweeping concept. It does not have to be a permanent solution to your life's hardest problems. Often, it is found in the way you structure the next 60 minutes. Think about the simple, reliable patterns of your day. Maybe it is the act of making a cup of coffee or tea, focusing entirely on the warmth of the mug in your hands and the scent rising from it. Maybe it is the way you organize your desk, tidying away the visual clutter so that your external space feels a little more breathable. Perhaps it is the commitment to a specific, quiet morning routine, or the simple act of stepping outside for 5 minutes to feel the air on your face. These small, reliable actions create a baseline of stability. They serve as anchors for your nervous system. When your mind is spiraling with worries about the future or heavy reflections on the past, your body needs a physical anchor to remind it that you are safe in this exact moment. These routines are not about avoiding your feelings or ignoring the work you have to do. They are about creating a reliable container so that you don't feel like you are floating away in the intensity of your own process. They provide a sense of agency. When so much of what you are going through feels outside of your control, mastering the small, daily rhythms gives you back a sense of ownership over your own life. This is the foundation upon which everything else is built. If you can count on yourself to show up for your own morning coffee, or to take a walk at the same time each day, you are building a relationship of trust with yourself. You are proving that you are capable of providing for your own basic needs, even when the emotional weather is stormy. It is a way of parenting yourself, providing that consistent, gentle presence that says, "I am here, and I will take care of these small things for you." Try to notice the things in your day that don't change. The way the light hits a particular corner of your room, the texture of a favorite blanket, the sound of a familiar song, or the simple act of washing your hands. These things are indifferent to your stress. They are steady. They remain the same regardless of what you are processing internally. When everything feels heavy, these small, unchanging details can offer you a moment of quiet relief. As you move through this time of healing, don't underestimate the power of these tiny, mundane rituals. They are not trivial. They are essential. They keep you anchored to the earth. They remind you that while your emotions may be in flux, your ability to provide for your own immediate comfort and care remains intact. You don't need to fix your entire life today. You just need to show up for the next small, steady task. By focusing on these little anchors, you are creating a sense of safety that will eventually hold you steady through even the biggest transitions. You are creating a home within yourself that feels solid, reliable, and entirely your own, one small moment at a time. There is a profound, quiet kind of courage required to stand in the middle of a process and admit to yourself and to the world that you are still hurting. We live in a culture that is obsessed with the after picture. We celebrate the polished finish, the successful outcome, and the neat, tidy narrative of someone who has moved on and found their center. We are surrounded by images and stories that suggest if you just work hard enough, you will eventually reach a state of permanent resolution. But the reality is that the human heart is rarely a finished product. It is a work in progress, and that progress is often messy, nonlinear, and filled with long periods of silence where it feels like nothing is changing at all. To stand in the middle of that mess and say, I am not okay yet, and that is all right, is an act of significant, necessary strength. It means you are prioritizing your genuine, lived experience over the performative need to appear composed or fixed for the benefit of others. It means you have stopped trying to curate your own pain to make it more palatable for the people around you. There is a deep liberation in giving up the facade. When you stop pretending that you have it all figured out, you stop wasting the immense amount of energy it takes to maintain that performance. We often feel like being incomplete, feeling the ache, holding the unresolved questions, carrying the fatigue, is a sign of failure. We look at our lack of closure and see it as a deficiency. But what if being incomplete is actually the most authentic state of being? What if the struggle you are in is not a sign that you are doing something wrong, but proof that you are doing the real work of being human? You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to have days where you feel raw, days where you are still figuring out what your boundaries are, and days where you simply don't have the answers. This courage to be incomplete is about reclaiming your right to your own timeline. You do not owe anyone a timeline for your healing. You do not have to apologize for the fact that your heart is taking its time to mend. When you accept your own incompleteness, you stop viewing your struggles as obstacles to your life and start seeing them as part of your life. You stop waiting for the real life to begin once the healing is over, and you start participating in the life you have right now, even if that life is currently characterized by some lingering pain or uncertainty. It takes bravery to sit in the tension of the not yet. It takes courage to look at a part of your life that feels fractured and say, I am still here, and I am still taking care of this. You are essentially telling yourself that you are valuable, even when you aren't at your best, even when you aren't productive, and even when you are still in the process of becoming. That is the kind of self-compassion that breaks cycles. It is the kind of kindness that allows you to be gentle with a heart that is tired and still hurting. So, Let yourself be a work in progress. Don't rush the conclusion of a chapter just because you feel uncomfortable in the middle of it. The middle is where you learn who you are when you aren't wearing a mask. The middle is where your resilience is forged, not through the elimination of struggle, but through the patient endurance of it. You are not a project to be finished. You are a person to be experienced, honored, and held with care. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be in the process. You are allowed to be exactly as you are right now, in all of your beautiful, struggling, and incomplete glory. That is enough. That has always been enough. You are not losing time by taking care of a tired heart. In a world that demands constant motion, it is easy to feel as though every moment spent in stillness or in the shadow of healing is a moment stolen from your potential. But the truth is exactly the opposite. You are investing in your own sustainability. You are tending to the root system of your life so that when the next season of growth arrives, you have the depth to support it. Returning to yourself is not a retreat. It is a homecoming. It is the process of gathering all the pieces of your attention that you have scattered across your worries, your obligations, and your past, and bringing them back to the center of who you are. As you move forward, keep looking for those tiny, quiet windows where you can offer yourself a bit more patience. It starts with the body. Throughout your day, begin to notice where you are physically bracing against your own life. Notice the tension you carry in the tightness of your shoulders, the clenching of your jaw, or the shallow rhythm of your breath in your chest. These are the physical manifestations of a heart that is trying to protect itself. When you find these spots, don't criticize them. Instead, intentionally invite them to release. Breathe into the tightness and whisper to yourself that in this moment, it is safe to let go. You are learning a new way to exist, one that is based on harmony rather than force. And that kind of learning takes time. This return is about learning to be your own most reliable companion. For so long, you may have been waiting for someone else to give you permission to rest, or for an external circumstance to change so that you could finally feel at peace. But the most profound shift happens when you realize that you are the one you have been waiting for. You are the only person who can truly witness the depth of your journey. Treat your heart with the same gentle, consistent care that you would offer a dear friend who had just come through a long, difficult storm. You wouldn't expect them to be perfect. You would just be glad they were safe. You would offer them a warm space, a listening ear, and the time they needed to feel like themselves again. You worth that same level of devoted attention. Returning to yourself also means forgiving yourself for the times you couldn't be strong. Forgive yourself for the days you felt overwhelmed by small things, for the moments you lost your temper, and for the times you felt like you were failing at your own recovery. None of those things make you less capable. They just make you human. Your heart has its own internal wisdom, its own pace, and its own way of processing the world. When you stop fighting that pace and start honoring it, the exhaustion begins to lift. You find that you have more energy, not because your problems have disappeared, but because you are no longer using your energy to fight against your own reality. As you close this chapter of your day, carry with you the understanding that you are doing enough. Simply by being aware of your needs, you are succeeding. You are building a relationship with yourself that is rooted in kindness rather than expectation. This is the ultimate goal of any healing journey: to reach a place where you are comfortable in your own skin, even when things are imperfect. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a person to be loved. Continue to be gentle with your heart. It has carried you through everything, and it is doing its very best to guide you home. Trust that you are moving in the right direction, and trust that you have the strength to handle the journey. One soft, intentional breath at a time. The path you are on does not have a destination where the work suddenly ceases, and you are left with nothing but perpetual ease. That is not the nature of being human. Instead, the path is one of deepening, a gradual, quiet process of becoming more acquainted with the landscape of your own inner life. There will be seasons where the terrain feels gentle and the air is clear. There will also be seasons where the climb feels steep and the weight of your own history returns to sit heavily on your shoulders. Both are part of the landscape. The goal is not to eliminate the seasons, but to learn how to walk through them with a different kind of companionship. A companionship with yourself that is rooted in steadiness rather than judgment. You have already proven that you can handle the difficult parts. You have already shown in the quiet moments of your own existence that you possess the capacity to hold yourself when things feel like they are coming apart. You are not just recovering from your past. You are actively shaping the way you respond to your present. That is a form of power that cannot be taken away. As you move forward, try to carry this realization with you. You do not need to be any different than you are in this moment to be worthy of your own care. You do not need to be further along, more accomplished, or less burdened. Your worth is not a reward for your healing. It is the starting point. When you find your heart feeling tired again, as it surely will, do not see it as a failure of your progress. See it as a request. Your heart is asking for a moment of pause, a bit of warmth, and a reminder that it is being seen. Return to the small anchors. Return to the breath. Return to the knowledge that you are doing the hard, honest work of building a life that is truly yours. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What is one small way you are being gentle with yourself today? Sometimes sharing our small anchors can help someone else find theirs. Thank you for being here and for having the courage to honor your tired heart. We'll see you in the next video.